of science at home. For today's activity, you're going to need some oil, you're going to need some ice cubes, and you're going to want some clear cups as well, and you are going to need a little bit of water. Now, what we're actually looking at is density. So density is the amount of weight that a certain object has for a certain amount of space. So if we do like a cubed inch here, water, for example, would have a density of 1 in that. If you take something like hydrogen, which is a gas, its density is very, very little, like 0.0 something. So it's not very much. It doesn't take up a lot of, or doesn't have a lot of weight for that same amount of space. So what we're going to do here is a few little activities with the density of oil, ice, and water. Now if I take my cup here and I fill it up with some water, and then I take one of my ice cubes, we know if we add ice to water that the ice cube is going to end up floating on top, right? So even though both ice and water are the same thing, because that water has been frozen, the same amount of water that you have is actually expanded. And so as that same amount of water expands, its density goes down because the weight for the amount of space that's taking up is less. So this is why ice floats on water. Now, if we were to dump out our ice cube and some of our water, and I were to add oil to our water, where do you think the oil goes? So make your prediction. And as I pour it in, what you're going to end up seeing happen there is that our oil is going to float on top of our water. So oil is less dense than the water. So water, as I mentioned, has a density of about 1. Most oils used, I use vegetable oil here, are about 0.92 or 0.93 for their density. So they're a bit less than. The question to you is, what if we take an ice cube, which we know floats on top of water, and we put it in our oil and some water in there? Where is it going to end up going? So what I'm going to do, take my bigger cup, I'm going to fill it up maybe about half to a third of the way with water. I'm going to add about the same amount of oil then to it. So you can see we've got our 2 layers there. And now I'm going to add a piece of ice in it. So where do you think it's going to end up? Let's see. And so if we look at that, you can see our ice cube is kind of floating a little bit on the ice, kind of near the bottomish of it there. So ice has a density typically about 0.93 or so. So depending on the type of oil you use, it might be a slightly higher or slightly lower in there. But it's going to end up settling right near that edge between the water and the oil because of its density. Now, over time, something really interesting is going to happen to our ice cube and the water that starts to melt off of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have us come back to it in just a bit, and we're going to see what's going on here. Alright, so it's been maybe about a minute or so since we last checked in on this, and you can see what's starting to happen is our ice cube is starting to melt, and at the bottom of it we've got this little drop or bubble coming down, right? So that's the water from the ice. As that ice cube is melted, the liquid water has a density of 1, just like the regular liquid water at the bottom. And so as that ice cube starts melting, the water that comes off it starts to sink down then to the water level because it has that density. So it's pretty neat. It shows you really the difference here in density between ice, which is that expanded water, and the regular liquid water, which is a more kind of condensed version of it. So really neat to see that happening and seeing that water basically dripping off of the ice cube and sinking through the oil. Well, hopefully you enjoyed learning about density and checking out our ice in oil experiment, and we'll see you for our next video.